Deep inside the ancient Ndala Forest lived a beautiful young woman named Zahuza. She had lived in the forest since she was a little girl, and she loved it because it was the only place that understood her secrets. Zahuza was a python. Her life was ruled by the sun and the moon. By the first light of morning, she became a beautiful woman. But when the darkness returned each night, her body would twist and coil, and she would become a powerful snake. Zahuza was a kind soul. Unlike the wicked pythons who craved human flesh, Zahuza never hurt anyone. She played with the animals and lived hidden deep in the forest where no eye could ever find her. Zahuza carried a deep, painful dream. She wanted to live a human life. She longed to walk among people, to feel the warmth of a family, to get married, bear children, and grow old with a husband. Her greatest pain related to this dream was her uncontrollable nature. She didn't have the ability to choose when she transformed. The shift was forced upon her, human by day, python by night. This meant she couldn't walk into the city and start a life, because her body would betray her, turning her into a giant snake at night, wherever she happened to be. She knew what she needed to do in order to have control of when she transformed into human or python, but the ritual demanded a sacrifice of human life. Zahuza refused. She was not ready to kill anyone just to experience her dream. Her kindness was the only thing that kept her trapped. One fateful day, as Zahuza was roaming the forest, she saw a little boy crying among the thick roots. She looked around, but did not see anyone else. She stepped forward and knelt before the little boy. "Hey, child, where are your parents, and what are you doing in a forest all by yourself?" The little boy replied and told her that he had two mothers. One had gone to heaven, and the other one had brought him here, explaining that the mother said she's coming back. Zahuza instantly realized that he had been abandoned. She did not say a word to frighten him, rather, she simply asked of his name. The little boy replied, "My name is Zalo. Come, let's sit and wait for your mother." Both of them sat down, but after hours, Zalo's mother did not come back. Zahuza, who had already understood what had happened, knew she had to take the little boy out of the thick forest. She looked at Zalo and asked him if he knew the address to their house, but the little boy shook his head and said no. Zahuza began to feel a little worried. It will be night soon, and she would take her usual form. She did not want the little boy to see her like that. She had never seen herself in this kind of situation before. She stood up and took Zalo and went deeper into the forest. It wasn't long before the little boy started crying. Zahuza gathered sweet fruits from the forest and gave them to him. As the sun began to sink and the shadows grew long, Zahuza knew she had to act fast before her uncontrollable shift began. Knowing the sun would soon set, she quickly gathered a sedative herb from a nearby cluster of leaves. She crushed it and gave the paste to Zalo, who quickly drifted off into a deep, peaceful sleep. After the shift took her, Zahuza looked at his innocent face and promised the little boy that tomorrow, they will go in search of his family. The next morning, the soft Early sun sliced through the canopy of Ndala Forest. Before Zalo woke from his deep sleep, the great python form of Zahuza had already stretched and shifted, leaving her standing by his side, fully human once more. She gently woke Zalo. She took his hand and led him out of the trees, crossing the line from the cool, silent forest into the heat and noise of the human world. "Little one," she asked, looking down at him, "what is your father's name?" "His name is Ekon," Zalo replied. She began asking people, approaching market vendors and men sitting in the shade. "Excuse me, do you know a man named Ekon?" The people looked at her strangely and always said no. They walked the crowded, noisy streets for a long time, and the hope in Zahuza's heart sank with every denial. Then, just when Zahuza felt the weariness setting in, her eyes fell upon a white paper pasted prominently on the wall of a building. It was a missing person poster. Zahuza didn't know what a poster was, but she recognized the photo on the paper instantly. The image was of a child, Zalo himself. Zahuza stopped. The paper on the wall showed Zalo's own face. Beneath the photograph was a detailed plea and a contact number. She quickly spotted a kind passerby down the street. "Please, sir," Zahuza pleaded, grabbing the man's arm. "Will you please call this number for me?" Zahuza pointed frantically at the phone number on the poster. The man, seeing Zahuza's distress and Zalo's resemblance to the missing poster, immediately pulled out his phone. He quickly dialed the number listed. After a few rings, a frantic voice answered. "Please tell him," Zahuza whispered urgently, "that I have his son. Tell him to meet us right here." The passerby relayed the message, giving Ekon their current location, and disconnected the call. It was only a short while later that a sleek, dark car sped up and stopped at the address. A young man, handsome but clearly distraught, rushed out. He instantly recognized Zalo and let out a choked cry, scooping the boy up in a tight, shaking hug. The young man was Ekon, Zalo's father. After a long, silent moment, he thanked Zahuza profusely. "Where did you find him?" he asked. "I found him in the forest," Zahuza replied. "But how did he get there?" "It was Mom," Zalo replied. "She said she was coming back, but she never came back again." Ekon went completely still, his face hardening with grief and anger as his eyes moved from his son's innocent face to Zahuza, the kind woman who had saved him. The painful truth of his wife's abandonment hung heavily in the air between them. The shock gave way to an overwhelming gratitude, and the silence was finally broken by Zalo. Still clinging to his father, the little boy turned his head and looked at Zahuza with wide, pleading eyes. "She has to come home with us, Daddy," Zalo insisted, wrapping his small arms around Ekon's neck. "She lives in the forest, and it's dark there. You have to bring her home." Ekon, desperate to reward this kindness and unable to refuse his son anything, immediately accepted Zalo's plea. "Please," Ekon urged, stepping closer to Zahuza, "my son is alive because of you. We owe you everything. You can't return to the woods. You must come stay with us." Zahuza felt her heart seize in her chest. All her life, she had dreamed of this moment, to walk among humans, to live a normal life. But the fear of her secret was a paralyzing cold. She knew the hours of the day were precious. If she went with them, what would become of her if she got caught turning into a powerful python at night? She knew she was not yet ready. This was not the right time. Forcing herself to pull back from the warm future Ekon offered, she shook her head firmly. "Thank you, but I must return to the forest now." "No," Zalo cried, sliding out of his father's arms and running to hug Zahuza's leg. "You have to come home with us, Zahuza. Don't go." Zahuza knelt down, trying to gently peel the boy off her leg. "Little Zalo, I really can't. I belong in the woods." Zalo looked her straight in the eye, his lower lip trembling. "If you don't come, I will follow you to the forest." That threat shattered Zahuza's resolve. She could never live with the thought of Zalo risking his life again because of her own secret. The image of the helpless boy alone in the dark forest was a terror far worse than the risk of her python form being discovered. Zahuza looked at Ekon, who watched the exchange with desperate hope. The decision was made. She rose slowly, her eyes wide with the realization of the danger she was embracing. "I will come with you," Zahuza said, her voice barely a whisper. Zalo let out a triumphant cheer and immediately took her hand. Ekon, relief washing over his face, let out a deep breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "Thank you, Zahuza. Thank you so much." He gently ushered Zalo and Zahuza toward the sleek, dark car. The car rolled through the city and into Ekon's compound. But, even before they stepped out, Zahuza noticed flashing lights, police cars already waiting, their presence heavy and tense. Ekon had reported what his wife had done the very moment he learned of Zalo's abandonment. The cruelty of leaving a child in a dark forest had shocked him beyond words. The law was already waiting to deal with her, but when the officers searched the house, they could not find her. She was gone. The woman had received word that her stepson was alive, rescued. Before she could be arrested, she had packed her belongings and fled. "Don't worry," one of the officers assured, "we will track her down." "Such wickedness cannot go unpunished," Ekon nodded, though his eyes burned with betrayal and fury. He pulled Zalo closer to his chest, wondering what would have happened to him if Zahuza did not rescue him. When the police left, Ekon led Zahuza into the house. Though the mansion was bright, the air inside carried the shadow of broken trust. He gave Zahuza a respectful glance and spoke softly. "You have done more for my son than anyone else ever could. This house will never be able to repay you." He took her to a guest room. It was a simple chamber, warm and neat, but as the door closed behind him, her heart raced wildly. Outside the window, the orange glow of dusk had begun to fade. Her body already knew what was coming, her skin prickled. Her breath grew sharp. She pressed her palms against the wall, whispering, "Not here, not now." But it was useless. The shift clawed its way out of her, and within minutes, the beautiful woman was gone, replaced by coils of glistening scales and golden eyes. Even in her python form, fear gripped her heart. What if someone opened the door and discovered her secrets? What would they do to her? What would become of her? Shaking, she crawled into the bathroom, her long body pressed against the cold floor. Never before had she been this afraid. Her breath came shallow, her chest rising and falling as she held it in, hoping no sound would give her away. At last, the long night passed. As the first light of dawn crept through the window, her body shivered and shifted once again. The coils and scales melted away, and her human form returned. Exhausted but relieved, she dressed herself quickly. Only then came a knock on the door. "Zahuza," Zalo's small voice called. The boy stepped inside, his eyes bright with innocence. "Come, breakfast is ready." She smiled faintly and followed him down. At the dining table, she sat across from Ekon, while the boy nestled happily by her side. Ekon's eyes lingered on her for a moment before he spoke. "Zahuza, I know you live in the forest, but tell me, how did you end up there? And where are your parents?" Zahuza lowered her gaze. "I am an orphan," she replied softly. "I have neither father nor mother." The forest became the only home I knew. Ekon's heart stirred with pity. He believed her words and felt sorry for the hard life she must have lived. From that day on, Zalo and Zahuza grew closer. They played in the garden together, chasing one another beneath the trees.
Often, she would sit with him in a room and tell him stories of animals. How the tortoise tricked the leopard, how the bird outwitted the hunter, how the hyena was forever greedy.
The boy listened with wide eyes, his laughter filling the air, never knowing that the storyteller before him carried a secret as heavy as the forest itself. But for days, though she lived in Ekon's house, Zahuza never once joined them at the dinner table. She would find reasons to slip away as evening came, quietly excusing herself before the meal. At first, Ekon thought little of it, but as the nights went by, his mind grew restless. Why does she always disappear when the sun goes down? Weeks passed, and Zahuza kept her secret. For all that time, she managed to hide the truth that she was a python from Zalo and his father. She lived among them, gentle, caring for the little boy, yet each night she locked herself away. All her days in Ekon house, not once did she join them at the dinner table. Each evening came with the same pattern, her door shut before the food was served. At first, Ekon ignored it, but as the weeks dragged on, his unease grew heavier. What kind of woman refuses to eat with the family that shelters her? What manner of secret demands such constant isolation when the sun goes down? "All is not well with this woman," he muttered one night. "There is something she hides from us, and I must find out." That evening, while Zalo slept peacefully, Ekon walked quietly through the house until he reached Zahuza's room. He raised his hand to knock, but stopped. Then he pressed his ear against the door, listening, waiting. His heart thudded as he swore he heard something shift inside, not the movements of a human, but something else. He left the corridor, But his thoughts did not leave Zahuza. He was now determined to find out what she was hiding. The next morning, Ekon found her sitting on a couch in the parlor. He walked closer and sat right next to her. "Zahuza," he began, his eyes steady on her face. "Tell me the real reason you have never joined us for dinner. And why is it that you are always the first person in this house to go to bed?" Zahuza replied quickly, her face calm. She claimed that this was simply her nature. "Ever since I was a small child," she said, "I have always slept quickly after sundown. My body simply demands rest." But, even as she spoke, she grew worried. Ekon's questions were too direct, and she knew her time was running out. She realized her secret was in danger of being discovered. That very moment, she made up her mind. She would find a way to perform the ritual that would allow her to control when she turned into a python and when she became human. The ritual required her to kill a few people in order to gain power over her body. Zahuza did not want to harm anyone, but it seemed she had no other choice. All her life she had been running from this ritual. Yet now, if she refused, her secret would be discovered, perhaps even leading to her death at the hands of humans. So she resolved to do what was necessary, but she also swore to herself that she would never harm an innocent person. "There are enough wicked and evil people in this world," she whispered. "It is their lives I will use to gain control over my body." One afternoon, Zahuza told Ekon that she missed the forest and wished to spend the evening there. She explained that she had lived all her life in the forest, and being away from it for too long was making her restless. She promised him that she would return the next day. Ekon hesitated, but at last he agreed, on one condition: she must come back as she had promised. Zahuza nodded gently and left, but instead of going into the forest, she found a narrow bush path and slipped inside. Hidden under the thick cover of trees and shrubs, she remained there quietly, waiting. The sun slowly fell from the sky, and as night finally came, her body shivered and shifted, skin peeling into scales, arms melting into coils. She became Python once again. There, deep in the bush, she waited. People passed along the path, their footsteps soft on the ground. With her sharpened senses, she could tell who was innocent and who carried evil in their hearts. The good ones she allowed to pass untouched, but when the evil ones came near, she struck without mercy, wrapping them in her coils and swallowing them whole. Each one brought her closer to the ritual she dreaded yet longed for, the only way she could gain control over her body, to choose when to be human and when to be serpent. The next day in Ekon's house was filled with sadness. Zahuza did not return as she had promised. Ekon tried to keep himself busy, but little Zalo carried the deepest wound. The boy, once lively and full of laughter, became completely sad. He did not smile, not even once. His small face was pale and withdrawn, his eyes fixed on the door, as though his waiting alone could bring her back. He refused to eat, he refused to play. Sometimes he would climb into a chair and press his cheek against the window, whispering in a voice that broke Ekon's heart, "Daddy, what if she never comes back?" Ekon could not answer. He pulled his son into his arms, but the little boy did not even rest his head on his father's shoulder. His sadness was too deep. Then, late in the night, footsteps finally sounded at the door. Zahuza walked in quietly, her face calm, her body glowing faintly as though touched by the moonlight. The moment Zalo saw her, everything inside him broke free. His face, which had been drowned in sorrow, suddenly lit up with the brightest smile. He leaped from the chair, tears streaming as he ran into her arms. That same evening, after Zalo's tears of joy had quieted, Zahuza brushed his cheek softly and asked, "Zalo, have you eaten?" The boy shook his head, his voice small. "I couldn't." "Not without you." Her eyes softened. She turned at once to Ekon. "Then let us eat together. Tonight, all of us must sit at the table." Ekon blinked, taken aback. Ever since Zahuza had been living with them, she had never once joined them for dinner. Each evening she vanished with one excuse or another, and it had stirred a quiet doubt in his heart that perhaps she was hiding something from them. But now, here she was, insisting they eat together. The table was set. For the first time, Zahuza sat beside Zalo at the dinner table while Ekon sat across from them. The boy, happy beyond words, laughed between bites, his small hands eager as he reached for food. Zahuza guided him gently, her smile calm and tender. Ekon watched them, his doubts slipping away with each passing moment. Perhaps he had been mistaken all along. Perhaps she was not hiding anything. Zahuza wore a calm smile. The ritual was complete. At last, she could choose when to be human and when to be a python. No more fear of being discovered in the night. No more restless hiding. She did not regret what she had done. Those she devoured were evil people, men filled with darkness in their hearts. The world will be better without them. She had taken only what she needed, and now she was free. From that day forward, she poured her heart into the little boy. Zalo was never far from her side. They ran together in the garden, their footsteps scattering dry leaves, their laughter rising into the evening air. She chased him between the trees, caught him in her arms, and spun him around until his giggles echoed through the house. For the first time since his mother's passing, Zalo laughed freely. He laughed until his cheeks glowed, his eyes shining with a joy Ekon thought was gone forever. Ekon stood at a distance and watched. Many evenings he lingered by the window pretending to busy himself with work, yet his eyes never left the two of them. He saw how Zalo clung to Zahuza's hand, how the boy's sadness melted whenever she was near. Gratitude rose in his chest, but gratitude was not all. Day by day, his heart shifted. He found himself waiting for her laughter, searching for her smile. Whenever she bent to lift Zalo into her arms or ran across the garden with her hair flying, something inside him stirred, something he had long buried. It was as though her presence stitched broken pieces back together, not only in the boy's heart, but in his own. Ekon tried to tell himself it was only respect, only admiration. But each day, as he watched Zalo's joy grow and felt his own spirit lighten, He knew the truth he could not speak. Zahuza was slowly capturing his heart. One quiet evening, after Zalo had gone to bed, Ekon sat alone in his chamber, his thoughts restless. For weeks he had carried it inside him: gratitude, admiration, love, but now it was too heavy to keep unspoken. Yet before he would ask her, there was someone he must first seek permission from. The next morning, he called Zalo to his side. His son looked up at him with wide, curious eyes. "Zalo," Ekon said softly, "tell me, would you be happy if Zahuza stayed with us forever? If she became your mother?" He had not even finished speaking when the boy burst out, his small voice trembling with excitement. "Yes. Yes, Father, I want her to be my mother." The joy on his face was pure and unstoppable. That very evening, Ekon asked Zahuza to walk with him in the garden. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of gold and fire. He stopped beneath the tall trees, turned to her, and with all the weight of his heart, he spoke. "Zahuza, you have brought laughter back into my son's life, and peace into mine. I do not wish for you to be only a guest in this house. I wish for you to be part of this family. Will you marry me?" For a moment, Zahuza stood still. Her heart trembled with a joy she had long buried. This was all she had ever wished for: to live among humans, to love, to be loved, to raise a child, and to grow old in peace. And now, with her power to choose when to be human or python, nothing stood in her way. Her eyes softened, and she gave a small nod, her voice carrying both relief and happiness. "Yes, Ekon. I will marry you. I will be Zalo's mother." That night, joy filled the house. Zalo laughed until he could not stop, clinging to her as though afraid she might vanish. Ekon's heart, once heavy with suspicion, beat with gratitude and love. And Zahuza, for the first time in her life, felt truly human, not because of her form, but because she had finally found where she belonged. That same evening, a knock came at the door. 2 policemen stood outside. "Sir," one of them said gravely, "we bring heavy news. The woman who abandoned your son in the forest, your wife, she has been found dead. Her body was discovered on the outskirts of the city. The marks on her flesh, they look like the attack of a giant snake." Ekon froze, his jaw tightened as the words sank in. A mix of grief and fury flashed across his eyes, but there was also a strange heaviness lifted from his chest. Fate had judged the woman who had left his child to die. Behind them, Zahuza's blood ran cold, her breath caught. She remembered the night of the ritual, the faces of the wicked ones she had swallowed in order to gain her power. Now she knew, Ekon's wife, the woman who abandoned Zalo, had been one of them. A chill ran through her body. Her freedom had been sealed in that woman's blood. Ekon pulled Zalo close, whispering, "She is gone, my son. The one who left you in that dark forest will never hurt you again." The days that followed were filled with peace. Ekon, moved by love and gratitude, wasted no time. He and Zahuza were quietly married at the court, with little Zalo holding her hand proudly as though he had always known she was his mother. For the first time in her life, Zahuza's deepest dream had come true.
Even though she was a python, she was now the wife of a human, a mother to a son who adored her, and the keeper of a secret no one will ever uncover. In the warmth of that home, laughter returned. Zalo smiled again, brighter than ever before, and Ekon's heart grew calm and full. Zahuza, who once feared the night, now feared nothing. She had a family. She had love. And though her secrets lived hidden in her veins, it never came between them. They lived happily ever after. The end.